Friday, Baylor College of Medicine and Friends of Baylor. Well, we're approaching Memorial Day, so I thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity to talk about the Baylor relationship with the military and the Veterans Association for a lot of reasons. So if you think about the VA, many of you will not know this, so I thought it'd be fun to review it. But the modern VA actually started with General Omar Bradley, the fifth and last five-star general. He was responsible for the 12th U.S. Army Group that was in Europe and commanded 1.3 million troops right at the end of World War II. What's not known about General Bradley is that he actually played a major role in the administration of the Veterans Administration. At the time, it was known as the Department of Veterans Affairs. And what he was charged with by President Truman was to take over the VA and sort of manage the logistics. So General Bradley was known for his big vision and being able to handle the large logistics of warfare. And if you go back and think about what was going on at the time, he commanded 1.3 million troops, but there were 13 million troops coming back from Europe, and there was a very low capacity to take care of them. In order for him to be permitted to do this, Truman had to get through Congress that he'd be allowed to run the VA, even though he was in active military. And the problem he faced with all these troops coming back, the VA had only 84,000 beds spread across 98 hospitals in 45 states in the District of Columbia, and most of the facilities were actually in rural communities. So it's completely different from what it is now. And he was speaking with General Hawley, who also had the responsibility for some of the strategizing around this. And they both thought, we should probably shift the location of the VAs to near medical schools who could staff them, and also towards more urban communities. And they thought that maybe the affiliation with medical schools would provide them the physician workforce that they needed. And there were three institutions in particular with leadership at the medical schools who were also talking to Bradley and Hawley, and that included Dr. DeBakey in Tulane, and then the surgical chairs at Harvard and Hopkins. And General Bradley pushed through the 1946 Memorandum Number 2 that allowed the affiliation of the VA with medical schools. And the other major thing that they did was push through the concept of a medical corps, in other words, physicians that could be hired in the VA system. It was called the Department of Medicine and Surgery. And not surprisingly, all the civil service leaders were totally against it, because all of a sudden there are going to be all these physicians employed by VA hospitals. But what that did is within 6 months, the VA's full-time physician staff went from 600 to 4,000, not including all the residents and students who would be there. And that VA medical school partnership was good for both. It's now the largest training program in the country with 120,000 trainees, and nearly 70% of every physician who's trained has gone through the VA. So this was a major change, the redistribution of the VA hospitals to medical schools. And during Bradley's tenure, he established 70 new hospitals and affiliations with 63 medical schools. So a huge change in the VA system. Well, we played a large role in that. Dr. DeBakey was a colonel in 1942 to 1946, and he was the chief of the Surgical Consultants Division of the Army's Surgeon General's office. And he had been speaking with his friends, actually, with neurosurgeon Harvey Cushing, who'd been a physician during World War I and had always thought that, we should have learned a lot more and never really had a research program or something to improve veterans' lives. So he encouraged the VA to set up a special medical advisory group, and this was under DeBakey's pushing. And that medical advisory group was composed of a bunch of very distinguished doctors, and the very first chairman of that group was Dr. Charles Mayo of the Mayo Clinic. And Dr. DeBakey was instrumental in pushing the importance of research for the improvement of patient care, particularly for veterans. And it was quite an interesting ad hoc committee, but Dr. DeBakey was the representative from the National Academy of Sciences, And it was, as I said, it was chaired by Dr. Mayo. And that committee continued to function for many, many years. And this is another example of the committee coming together, a great picture where they were studying vascular injuries in veterans. So, our connection with the VA really dates back to 1940. Baylor University College of Medicine received a telegram from the U.S. Surgeon General saying we needed to organize a medical unit. And a lot of the medical units in World War II were institution dependent. So we formed, Baylor University College of Medicine then formed the 56th Evaluation Hospital, composed almost entirely from hospital staff, medical school faculty. It was activated in 1942, and it served a 750-bed tent hospital that was in close support of Army forces. And so that was the original concept of the MASH unit, the mobile surgical hospital that was close to the front lines. So that particular concept that is popularized in the show MASH was really invented by the Baylor College of Medicine and Dr. DeBakey. What's interesting is in 1948, President Truman did an executive order that basically transferred what was then a 500-bed naval hospital to the VA, and the VA director immediately called Dr. DeBakey and said, can you staff it? Because they didn't have the ability to staff it. And that started in 1949, our affiliation agreement. And that became our very first affiliated hospital. So just as we were becoming the founding member of the Texas Medical Center, the VA in 1949 became our first affiliated hospital, and Dr. DeBakey actually moved his laboratories there, and a lot of the great science around changing in vascular repair and all was done at the VA hospital. And then in 1983, the Congress approved the construction of a new $246 million VA hospital, really on the same campus. So you can see the Naval Hospital in the front, and in the back there on what is still now the VA campus is the beginning of the construction of the VA. And in 1991, this state-of-the-art facility was opened on the current medical center. And then George W. Bush signed Public Law 108-170 on December 6, 2003, officially changing the facility's name to the Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center. So that, it's when you think about it, the entire current footprint of the VA, the way it moved to academic medical centers, affiliated with medical schools, we were at the forefront of that, and Dr. DeBakey and Baylor College of Medicine were the very first ones to affiliate. And if you look at the VA today, it's known for its excellence in the treatment of all kinds of veterans' diseases, strokes, heart failure, transplants, spinal cord injuries. It provides care to over 130,000 veterans. And our hospital is the quaternary referral hospital for most of the Gulf State region and some of Texas as well. So we've had a long and very storied history with the VA, and part of that, one of the reasons why we take our relationship with the military so seriously. Next week, on the same day we hold commencement for our medical graduate school and genetic counseling programs, we will have a separate military commissioning ceremony for 2 medical students who will graduate and immediately begin serving in the U.S. Army. We do this every year to honor them for serving. We're very proud of our connection both to the VA and to our military colleagues. So giant shout out this week. Lots of stuff to talk about. Next week we have commencement for medical, graduate, and genetic counseling students. I mentioned that we will have the military commissioning. We also, Monday is Memorial Day and a federal holiday remembering and honoring U.S. personnel who died in service in our military, and almost 650,000 troops have died throughout battle in U.S. history, and 539,000 have died from other non-combat related causes. We've talked a lot about COVID, and when you put that in perspective, so almost 1.1 million people have died in battle or related to the military service. 1.2 million Americans have died from COVID, so just something to think about. And I also want to end with a big shout out to our own VA and Dr. Laura Peterson, who is the director of the Center for Innovations in Quality, Effectiveness, and Safety called iQuest. It was their research day, and the keynote speaker was Dr. Carolyn Clancy, who's the Assistant Undersecretary for Health for Discovery Education Affiliated Networks, basically runs all the research programs for the VA system, came and gave a keynote speech, and she was really great. We had testified together a few years ago in the Congress to show, sort of to support the importance of the VA medical school relationship. So great to see her. Giant shout out to Laura Peterson and her whole group at the VA. Have a great long weekend and happy Memorial Day to everybody.